Supergirl has flopped. Is flopping, will flop even more, all of the above. I don't think anyone on either hemisphere of the planet is even remotely surprised. Even those very strange creatures that really liked its predecessor, James Gunn's Superman, written and directed by James Gunn. Being the CEO of DC Studios and the guy who is basically wholly in charge of everything that goes on with the planning and production of all their movies, James Gunn will have been particularly invested in this, the DCU's second mainline movie, which of course is the movie that's meant to follow directly on from the aforementioned James Gunn's Superman by writer and director James Gunn. From a box office perspective, Superman didn't flop outright, but it also wasn't the smash hit that Warner Brothers and DC would have wanted it and kind of needed it to be, not by a long shot. After a somewhat disappointing performance and an ever-dampening general consensus regarding the storytelling quality of the film, the higher-ups would have been all the more desperate to make a splash worth taking note of, with this movie obviously being their second attempt and latest opportunity to do so. Unfortunately for them, Supergirl is an infinitely less popular character than Superman. Shocker, I know. So in the same way a movie starring Tom Cruise is likely to draw more audience than a movie starring a young debut actor, DC could and would never have expected this movie to draw anything like the same level of box office attention that its older brother got. Not only that, but Superman's reputation has been souring since its release. So following up both canonically and chronologically with what is a Superman adjacent story, with close similarities in costume, logo and name, might not be the greatest business decision. What is also not the greatest business decision is the decision to write a terrible movie, which is something you would think the studio might have learned after the aforementioned damp squib of a flagship. Unfortunately, DC have gone the way of Marvel, Star Wars and the Jurassic World franchise by saying,
"Am I so out of touch?" No, it's the children who are wrong.
When it comes to Supergirl itself, there really isn't a lot to like. Jason Momoa puts in a fun, Jason Momoa-like performance as Lobo, but to be honest, that basically means nothing because he also put in a fun, Jason Momoa-like performance in the Minecraft movie, and, well. As for the other performances, I still like David Corenswet as Superman, kind of. He was basically the only consistently pleasant thing about his own movie, and I feel about as bad for him as I felt for Henry Cavill when he was donning the spangly blue tights. Both of them have suffered tremendous misfortune when it comes to the scripts with which they were supposed to work. They must have been beaming when they first received their respective phone calls letting them know that they would be playing one of the most iconic characters in the history of fiction, only for them to flash forward a few years where they're only remembered really for the memes that their movies created rather than the stories that they told. As for Corenswet specifically, I can't really help but like him in both this and his own, and I use this phrase very lightly, solo movie. He is a kind of charming guy and he seems pretty undeniably nice and wholesome, which are both words that any man famously wants to be described as. However, you can't help but shake the feeling he's just not quite doing the job he needs to, or at least the scripts won't allow it. Besides all the stupidity that he displays throughout his first two appearances as the character, and there are a lot of examples of it, he just never seems to come across as particularly commanding or assertive, even in a kind way. It is as if he is just permanently locked into Clark Kent mode, even when he's literally flying about and punching things in the famous blue tights and red cape. Considering Superman is supposed to be the leading figure of this new cinematic franchise, at least chronologically, you would expect him to at least turn up for a little bit of his own movie, but really, he never does. And in not James Gunn's Supergirl, he appears even less. Anyway, we must finally come to the woman of the half hour, the Australian Targaryen herself, Miss Millicent Alcock. Contrary to a lot of the stick she's been getting from various corners of the internet, I actually think Alcock did alright in the role of Kara. Well, about as alright as she could have done, considering the circumstances. Unfortunately, she's kind of in the same boat as Cavill and Corenswet, fighting a losing battle against the unstoppable force of bad screenwriting. She is obviously a talent though, that much we could see from her breakout role in House of the Dragon. She has a good ability to show a range of emotion, even subtle and ambiguous ones. There are a few moments in the movie wherein she does this, which does elevate some of the minimal drama from achieving about 1% more of my investment in the story. The story doesn't really know what it is, and it can't seem to decide what exactly it's supposed to be saying. Can revenge ever be satisfying? Not according to Kara. At least, not according to Kara when it comes to this one specific girl who she sort of half befriends in the film. For some reason, Supergirl seems hell-bent on not letting this girl avenge her own family by killing what is, to put it bluntly, a plainly evil c***. Now, I can't say I've ever had to seek murderous revenge on anyone before, but I understand when older, wiser characters in stories try to put a stop to younger characters from being consumed by their lust for revenge. They say things like, nothing will change, you won't feel any better, or it won't bring them back. I get it. Being spiteful and bitter is probably not the optimal way to live your life, and you're probably set for a much more peaceful life if you can just learn to move on and forget about any wrongs that may have been done to you. However, if, as is the case for Ruthie in this movie, your entire family, including your parents and brother, have been brutally cut down in front of your very eyes by a serial rapist and homicidal psychopath named after a delicious French dessert, I don't think it's unreasonable or even morally dubious for you to relentlessly track the son of a bitch down until you can bring him to justice in whatever way you see fit. It would also rid the universe of a serial evildoer who is only likely to continue tearing families apart and preying on innocent women and children. The fact that Kara expends so much effort in the movie just trying to stop Ruthie from killing Krem is frankly ludicrous, and she should be given a stern talking to and a lesson in justice by Clark when she gets home. Though, to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily trust Mr. Geneva Convention to explain the delicacies of justice to anyone. The bottom line is, this movie just isn't worth your time. It's about as worthwhile as all the other DCU movie thus far, and therefore not a particularly good use of anyone's time. I don't have any real strong investment in Superman as an IP, nor in the DC franchise as a whole. I love Batman as a character, and I'll always be interested in any story about him, whatever form that might take. But as of right now, it is looking like this new, not in any way improved version of a DC cinematic universe is just going to fall flat on its face before its race has ever really gotten going. Too many of its mainline movies are falling by the wayside, being ghosted, pushed back, shelved, or outright cancelled. And the films that have seen the light of day are not exactly hitting the ground running. Let's put aside the terrible decision making in terms of which movies were selected to kick off what was always meant to be a true competitor to the MCU's glory days. While Supergirl, The Authority, Clayface, and Creature Commandos are not exactly household names that might draw audiences to the cinema on brand recognition alone, ultimately a cinematic universe is only ever going to survive for as long as it can consistently produce strong, well-conceived ideas with excellent scripts and engaging characters. We are 2 movies into the JGCU, and so far, according to box office numbers, audiences haven't been particularly impressed with what they've seen. Fudge as you might, the numbers don't lie. And when the DCU comes to an early, unceremonious end at the hands of another disappointing day at the box office by the time Man of Tomorrow comes around, no one can say they're surprised. Thanks very much everyone for watching the video. I am truly grateful for any one of you that takes the time out of your day. It really, really means a lot to me that you're here. I am still working on videos all the time, behind the scenes. Some longer, some shorter. I plan to keep releasing them on a semi-consistent basis, so be sure to stick around if you're interested in hearing more from me on whatever movies I might be talking about next. Until then, thanks again, everyone. Toodaloo.